Okay, so let's demonstrate how our software helps you map live in workshops. This is our final map, but for the sake of just demonstrating some of the features that enable you to work in a workshop, I'm going to start a new one. So we'll start a new process and we'll call it cup of tea. I've already used that one, so I'm going to call it cup of tea 2. Okay, so we've started now. This is a start point of any process map, a start and a stop, the barest minimum any process can be. So we're going to start to map a tea round now for an office of 4 or 5 people and utilising a kettle and a kitchen that's elsewhere. So I'll just go through and start to map that. First step of it is we're going to get the orders. So we're going to get the orders. That's done by a team member. And we'll say going around the 5 desks takes about 5 minutes. We'll say it's customer value. Won't put any inputs and outputs or documents onto there at the moment. So that's the first step. As you can see, those details are in there. If you wanted to, you could add an IT system. Hopefully something you'll notice here is that the icons are user friendly. So you can load your own icon sets in either as icons of the actions that are happening or maybe even of systems that are being used. So if you were to be using a certain system, you could load in their logo and that could be the activity icon for any work going on in that system. So team members, we've got the order now. We're now going to travel to the kitchen. So go to kitchen and we'll say that's 3 minutes. And we'll say that's business value rather than customer value. And that's again done by the same role. So I can now look at the next step, which might be to wash the cups. And that's going to take us a couple of minutes. And the role is again a team member doing this one. So not a lot of variety in this particular map. It's all done by one person. And we'll say that's business value again. Probably not waste. Is it customer value? Probably not. So we will then look at the next step, which will be boil the kettle. So boil the kettle. And again, that's done by team member. Now we're going to do everything in series here. Obviously you could do some work in parallel potentially, but we'll say boil the kettle. Now what's perfectly normal in that particular instance is that actually instead of boil the kettle, what we actually need to do is check if there's enough water. So as you can see, instead I'm just clicking on the item I want to insert before, and I'm just going to put a choice in there. Is there enough water? And we'll say yes, maybe 80% of the time, and no is 20. And we'll now say okay, if no, then you need to fill kettle. And again, as a team member role, we'll say that takes a minute. We'll say that's business value. and we're now going to join those two up. So I'm just going to drag and drop it onto there. So 80% of the time we're just going to boil it, 20% of the time we're going to fill it and then boil it. Next step potentially is, let's start to put the tea in the cups. I'll say that takes a minute. There we go. And again, potentially business value, customer value in this. I make my order, I get a cup of tea. That's kind of what I'm bothered about. So we'll put tea in cups, but again, actually, realistically, we might have run out of tea. So we'll have a look at that. And we'll say actually yes and no, and maybe in this particular instance 90% of the time yes, there's enough tea. We only buy a small lot of tea bags, so 90% there's enough. If there's not, then we need to go to the shop. And the shop, going to the shop's going to take us roughly 10 minutes. And maybe even that's waste, because we could potentially avoid that. So again, we're going to draw those two together. So we've got the tea in there, we boiled the kettle, we put the tea in the cups. So we'll call that putting the tea in the cups and brewing. So that probably needs a little bit longer now, so we'll call that 3 minutes instead. Okay, next step potentially is milk. So we will add milk. And we will look at team member doing that. Taking a minute. Again, we may well run out of milk, so we'll just actually look at that now. Accidentally, I've knocked 2 of them on there, so I'm just going to delete that. Go back into the choice and say enough milk, question mark, and yes and no. And again we'll say 90-10. We would need to go to the shop again, so I'm just going to copy that one and drop it on there. And then join the two up. For the sake of this, we'll say no one takes sugar, so we'll say that's the end of our particular process after we've taken it back to the desks. So we'll deliver the tea. So the role there is going to be team member again, and we've got to go back from the kitchen and deliver it, so we'll say that's 5 minutes in total, and that's customer value. So we have a process map that we've constructed. Hopefully you can see it's all very easy. If I needed to insert something at the start by chance, maybe I need to do something with sugar, I can just drop that in and everything's automatically moving out. So all nice and easy for me to map. If this particular choice was in the wrong place, I could just drag it and everything comes with it. So I'll drag that to the start. Oh no, it's actually not at the start, it's actually before boil the kettle, so we'll move that back. So all really easy to do. Now we've constructed a map, and we've got costs in our roles table. Cost per hours in there. So we can now start to calculate and assess this particular process and start to analyze what's going on. So because we've captured the roles, the times in there, we can very easily now move into analysis and actually trying to understand the process and look at maybe where bottlenecks are happening. So I'm just going to change the view in here a second. So if we just go into view and say I'm going to move into an analysis mode, that just brings up a different window for me. I'm also going to look at evaluation. So on here, in terms of evaluation, show measures, I can do a number of things. So I can annotate the map with the times. The costs are coming up 0 at the moment, so I just need to hit evaluate process and away we go. So the costs are coming up to show me the cost of each step annotated underneath. That's great, and that might be useful for various particular items. But what we actually want to do now is maybe start to look at, okay, so where is my problems with processing time in here? So if I look at that, I'm getting a red, amber, green indicator against each step. So I can easily say there the trips to the shop are red, so they're in the top 25% of times. Delivering it is amber, and getting the order is amber. So that's told me something. But maybe I'm more bothered about total cost, so again I can look at that. Now these in this simple example will be the same. In other more complex maps they wouldn't necessarily be. But that's just helping me hone in on those bits that maybe I need to be focusing on. And also I can now start to say, well, actually, how much does this cost me? So by clicking on the start overall, I can see this process on average is taking me 23 minutes to deliver, which is all processing time. We didn't put any break times, wait times in there. And the total cost of this, based on the salary of a team member, is £5.80 to deliver this process. So I now have the baseline of my particular process. Thanks.